Hey, what's up? This is Morning Questions episode 2. It's a series I do where I just wake up and talk about what's on my mind, any questions in my head. Some of them will have answers, some of them won't. So, the first thing I want to talk about today is the social psychologist, Jeffrey Miller, tweeted out a good question that I wanted to echo, which is basically, what are 3 topics you haven't formed your opinion on yet? When you don't have a fully fledged out belief on yet, because you haven't fully considered the ethics of the situation, or it could be really for any reason. The first that came to mind for me was whether or not we have free will. I haven't quite made my mind up on this, even though I lean towards we probably don't. It's just still something I haven't really done a deep dive in on. The second one is, can there be an objective good and an objective bad without, some sort of God to root your morality in? Or is it all just relativistic? Again, my intuition is against relativism, but it is a tricky question. Even though I have spent a considerable amount of time thinking about this one, I don't have a fully formed opinion. It's more of just an interesting conversation I'm down to have. The next one is social media. Is it healthy? What's the ideal relationship with it? Is it inherently bad? Is it inherently selfish and narcissistic? I haven't really made up my mind about this. There's pretty good arguments on both sides. Okay, the next thing is, I've been debating this a lot. Is it worth blocking certain users on Twitter who clog up my feed with just pure reactionary bad politics, very outraged culture takes? Is it worth blocking them, but creating sort of an echo chamber of people I deem to be rational and unbiased, but at that point I'm not getting any outside information from things I already agree with? So it's this kind of idea of like letting my mind be free, but I don't sharpen my sword, so to speak, like rhetorically and politically. Or I can, improve my arguments by interacting with people I really disagree with, but it's really clouding the mind. Like, a lot of people on Twitter are just jumping on the latest news cycle and just throwing out really bad takes right off the cuff, and having to see that is actually really, really clouding. The next one is, I'm wondering why people hate hearing positive news about bad things, disheartening topics. It seems unintuitive, because if you hear something bad, you would think that if there's good news to report, we would jump right on it. But from what I've found in my circle is that if there's something bad, like the way women are treated in the U.S., or the way income equality sort of has just opened up in the U.S., and how, the top 1% make way more than the bottom 30, bottom 40, whatever it is. That's bad. That's a bad thing. But if you have good news on the topic, for instance, like the poorest in the U.S. are still in the top 1% globally, and their conditions have gotten better, people don't want to hear that. It's almost like they think you're like defending the original bad thing and trying to make excuses for it. So I'm wondering a lot about that. People don't like hearing positive news about bad things. The next one is what's going to happen in 2020, the presidential election. I've kind of heard a lot about, who the Democrats are going to run. And I was just thinking, Americans should not accept that the new politics is celebrity, inexperience, insensitive, boisterous, gaudy. We should not accept that. We should, especially the Democrats, should stop looking for a Trump analogy to run. They should double down against and find effective strategies to fight inexperience, fear-mongering, incompetence, bigotry. Okay, my next question is, what does a secular community look like in the U.S.? This is because more and more people are reporting no religious affiliation, and a lot of people say the only reason they love going to church or practicing religion is because of the community it brings, which is totally a valid reason. But I'm wondering how we can separate that from the suspension of rationality that is usually required in those settings, and a lot of the hate that comes with those ancient texts. So what does a secular community look like? What can we all rally around? And when I think about it, it has something to do with spirituality, but it's more of encouraging introspection and self-awareness, and maybe exploring rites of passages culturally, like taking psychedelics when you turn 18 with community elders, something like that, or just a community that's more empathetic and comfortable talking to one another about our issues. And this got me talking about what are the largest signs that our culture's unhealthy right now, and in general, what are signs that any culture is unhealthy. And when I thought about this, I was thinking about the way we treat opposing beliefs is really, really bad right now. So if someone disagrees with me, I just completely castigate them as the enemy. Even if someone has a really, really messed up belief that could potentially be called racist or homophobic, there's no effort to change their mind or hear how they arrived at that. And I think people's beliefs are really a product of their circumstance, and they just if you have a bad belief, you've been given bad information. And instead of trying to see where the bug entered their software, we completely shut down and will not engage with them anymore. And I think that's a sign of a very unhealthy culture. The way we treat women shows that we continue to give too much to our limbic system and our, ancient primal brain. We still haven't overcome a lot of those differences. Our fear around sex and drugs seems behind the times. Even parents can't speak candidly with their children about it. Schools completely mishandle that side of education. And even people in mature relationships, have really unhealthy relationships with one another. And with drugs, there's just a culture of fear around it. People are still getting arrested for stupid minor possession charges. The next one is, I'm wondering how one can be anti-radical right now, and this idea of anti-radicalism. I think a lot of people are being encouraged right now to double down on their extreme views, which of course they view as the only sensible reaction in this current state. But I'm sort of encouraging myself to be an anti-radical, even though it's always tempting. I remember when I first discovered Noam Chomsky, and I sort of had this extreme view on kind of the means justify the ends stance on politics, and if they don't agree, then screw them, we're going to move on without them. But that's always just a phase, and it's never the right way to address hysteria. George Orwell had a great quote that paraphrases it seems to me the way to combat hysteria is not with hysteria, but with a calm mind, or something like that. But it really is true. So many people have been radicalized by Trump, and I'm just resisting that urge and trying to stay comfortable in my measured approach, weighing both options and not coming up with something that is you're on our team or you're not, because I don't think that's helpful at all. It's just driving polarization. This next one's silly, but why are flights so expensive? This is super crazy. It's just like a giant Uber pool. I was just flying down to Atlanta this weekend to visit Tessa and June, And I mean, I got a pretty cheap ticket, but even still, it's too much. There needs to be some disruption in that area. But I guess it's the overhead costs are really high, so no one's done it quite yet. But domestic flights need to get way cheaper. I should be able to take a flight to Atlanta for $50 round trip, no problem. And then my last one is just like, what gives certain cities their vibe? Like, how come certain people are attracted to one city and not another? Um, and what gives a general sort of ineffable feel of a city? And I'm wondering, I think it has to be sort of the geography of it and the history of it. But yeah, I'm just wondering what initially made New York sort of like the go hard business side, and then LA kind of the woo woo hanging outside. Paul Graham has a great essay on like city and ambition or something like that, but check out Paul Graham's essay. So yeah, this was Morning Questions episode 2. Let me know if you have thoughts on any of these questions, and if you want to see more of these. Yeah, thanks so much.